Greeting to all YouTube viewers. I am Vansworth Mackenzie. This video is called The Talking Drum of the Willie Lynch famous speech of the making and breaking of a slave that I have taken from my history book to explain about Willie Lynch's philosophy about the Amite people who became known as the African people, black people, and the Negroes of the United States, who were brought over to the New World of the people of Europe to replace the native who were the first slave for the Gentile people of Europe after they captured New World. This is a story I have taken from a few pages from a book that is called The Talking Drum of the Willie Lynch famous speech of the making and breaking of a slave that I have gotten from a gentleman while I was living in New Jersey. I have incorporated some of this Willie Lynch story into this book, The Untold Forgotten Great Civilization of the People of Am, to give the Amite readers of this book the Gentile people mindset towards us Amite people whom they are taken as their captive and slave and called as Negroes and black people of today. There was a European slave master by the name of Willie Lynch who had slaved in what was named as the West Indies by Columbus, that is now called as the Caribbean by these same Gentile people who have deceived the world of people who came under their captivity with lies and false history of teaching. In this book that is called the Willie Lynch speech of the making and breaking of a slave, unfortunately, I do not have the complete book in my possession, but I only have a few leaflets that I have taken from this statement of the making and breaking of a slave. The book went on to explain that Willie Lynch came to the British colony of Virginia by the invitation of some slave masters of Virginia to encourage them how to make and break a slave. It seemed to me that they were having problems in the colony of Virginia with their slave population, and he gave his famous speech on the bank of James River in 1712 AD that was called The Making and Breaking of a Slave, of his methods of controlling his slave population in the West Indies. Willie Lynch went on to say to his fellow European slave masters that there were various principles of steps that were needed to take and make and break a slave. He went on to say that one of these breaking processes was that of the African woman and the controlling of the married unit, their mind and their language. Lynch went on to explain that while the Romans used cords and wood and crosses for the supporting of human bodies along their highways in vast numbers, they, the slave masters of Virginia, were using trees and rope to hang their slave on, because in his traveling he noticed slaves were hanging from various trees. He went on to explain to them that they were losing good profit by hanging their slaves who were involved in the slave uprising and the runaway of slaves that were caught. Willie Lynch went on to say that he was going to teach them his way of controlling the slave without losing good profit of slave labor and life. Some of his method that he was teaching them was to drive fear and distrust among the various slaves, and to instill in them to learn to love and put their trust only in their slave master and his kind of people rather than in their own fellow people, looking out for each other for their well-being. He was using the psychology of divide and conquer in what became known today as the slavery mentality that still very much affect many of our Amite people minds of today in their day-to-day life dealing with each other on a regular scale, especially in what became known today as the United States of America. This mistrust and fear that was to drive into the mind of the slave of the United States was for them to fear the slave master and to put their trust only in their slave master rather than in their own people, that became known as the slavery mentality, especially in what became known as the United States, that caused many Amite people not to have any real love, trust, and unity among their own people. The way the Amite people of the United States see it, it is only to rob and steal and sell drugs to their own people, to mess up and destroy their own people's mind with these drugs that was brought about by the Gentile people of the United States, to destroy their own people's mind of this destruction. I must point out that many of these Amite drug dealers that sell drugs to their own people and rob many of them in the process, they can only do these things in their own people neighborhood. But they cannot go into the Gentile European people neighborhood to do these things. They will be killed or put in prison for the rest of their life. When many of these Amite drug dealers find themselves in trouble and their back is against the wall, the first people that they would seek to run to for help is their own race of people whom they have been selling their drugs of poison to and robbing them in the process. Many of these Amite people of the United States and elsewhere would rather put their trust and love in many of the Gentile people of Europe and what became known as the United States, who have been abusing and brutalizing us for many centuries. The way it is in today's society among many Amite people of the United States and elsewhere, the slave master do not need to be around to push the fire of disunity among the various Amite people of today. The seed has already planted in their hearts and mind to have mistrust, disunity among themselves, so it comes naturally. Lynch went on to tell his fellow slave masters that if they were to follow his methods of dealing with their black slave, it would last for 300 or even 1,000 years of them having distrust amongst themselves. In the mindset of Lynch, teaching his many Gentile European slave masters of the United States, the Amite people would always look towards their slave master to put their trust, hope, and open them to better their standard of living and to put bread on their tables. Lynch went on to encourage his fellow slave master by saying that distrust is stronger than trust, and they must put the old black slave against a young black slave, the dark-skinned slave against a brown-skinned slave, and those of the female with long hair against those that have short hair. This distrust of confusion would last for 1,000 years, but it was necessary that they learn to trust, love, respect, and depend only upon their Gentile slave master and his kind of people for their hope and betterment of their life. According to Lynch's philosophy that he was teaching to his fellow European people of the United States, if they should apply these principles of his, it would not be necessary for them to keep on installing this belief in them all the time, for they themselves will carry on teaching it to the next generation, and the cycle will continue repeating itself generation after generation to come. In the mindset of Lynch, he compared the Amite people that he called as Negroes, that they were to be broken in like how a wild horse is broken and tied for the productive, good use of the economy of their system. He went on to say that the Negro woman should be put to produce a cross-breed of different shade of people that would be good for the labor workforce, and they were to be taught to respond to a new language of psychology and physical contentment. Lynch pointed out to his fellow Gentile slave masters of the United States that a wild horse and a wild Negro is very dangerous even when captured, for they will have the tendency to want to seek their freedom, and in so doing, they might turn around and might want to kill the slave masters and his family while they are sleeping. Therefore, they must make sure that the slaves sleep while they are awake, and they sleep when their slaves are awake, with someone watching them of their very movement. They should also pay extra attention to the female Negroes, that this indoctrination she will receive would later pass on to her young offspring to bring up a profitable workforce suitable for the slave master's needs. They should keep the body, but they should enslave the mind of their male slave. In other words, they should break their mind and their spirit to resist against the slave master's will. The next stage was to drive fear into the Negro male by stripping off one of the Negro male clothes in front of the other Negroes, male, female, and young and old. They should also tie the Negro male hand and feet to 4 horses and set them on fire, so that the horses would pull him apart in front of their very eyes. The next stage was to take a bull whip and beat the remaining Negro male to the point of death in front of the females and infants. They should not kill them, for they will be useful for the future breeding process, but they must be beaten to put the fear of God and the slave master in their hearts and minds. I must point out that I did not cover the full Willie Lynch story, but I just took a few abstracts from his famous speech he gave to encourage his fellow European slave masters of what became known as the United States to deal with their slave population and the embedment of the slavery mentality that would carry on for future generations. According to volume 12 of the Encyclopedia Britannica, what became known as the state of Virginia was the first colony for the British in what became known as the United States in 1607 in Jamestown. And the main crop that were grown at that time was that of tobacco for bringing a profit. But after tobacco business failed to bring in profit in the state of Virginia, it became a place for breeding slaves for the slave market of the United States to bring in profit as a part of their business. Not many of my people of the United States and elsewhere have any knowledge of this history I have written about, that I have learned from the reading of the encyclopedia and other history book that was written by the Gentile people of the United States and Europe for their benefit, who has knowledge of these things, of this history. This little history I have written might be offensive to some, but as I have mentioned in my various video that is on YouTube, that the truth has to be told, whether one like it or not. For this is the reality of life, and it has to be told. Take care.